Hey everybody, John the Other here, obviously, and I have a wacky conspiracy theory for your consideration. It goes like this. I would like you to imagine working in an industrial work environment, maybe a construction site, a place where there are certain hazards, such as forklifts and other heavy equipment, that has the potential to injure you, maybe leaving you crippled and, in some cases, ending your life. Now, a lot of people don't have to imagine this. Lots of people work in all kinds of dangerous environments: forestry, mining, industrial manufacturing, construction, metal fabrication, and so on. Let's also imagine that rather than being an organization like WorkSafe or Occupational Health and Safety, OSHA, the steps that people took to protect themselves from work hazards were just things they figured out for themselves. They shared these ideas informally through message boards and so on. Let's further imagine there was no large organized campaign to reduce workplace injuries, and things like hard hats and high-vis vests were only worn by workers in a defiance of the normal workplace attire. Look at that weirdo with his high-vis vest. He looks like such a nerd trying to not get crushed by a forklift. What a dipshit, right? But as much as the early adopters of hard hats and steel-toed boots might be looked at a little sideways, word would get around, and those guys wearing that unfashionable safety gear, maybe they wouldn't end up permanently unemployed due to injury as much, or they wouldn't get killed on the job as much, and so, over time, more guys would go buy themselves a hard hat from the guy who knows a guy, and he'll also hook you up with some safety glasses. Now, we're just imagining how this might work without OSHA or some other workplace or government-run safety organization. Of course, in the world that we actually live in, there is a well-established institutional culture of workplace safety, and the guys that you run into, say, at a coffee shop lined up with their hard hats and steel-toed boots, they're not dressed like that because they've decided to buck the fashion trends. They work in places where steel-toed boots are the expected standard. But what would you think if within government and media there was a well-funded and well-established movement to convince construction workers that wearing steel-toed boots and other personal safety gear was not just unnecessary, but it was foolish and paranoid? What if there were orientation meetings at job sites where somebody from corporate comes to site to tell the new hires on the construction site that they should throw away their steel-toed boots and put on Reeboks or flip-flops? That they should not wear safety glasses when they're using the grinder, and they will be considered sissies if they use fall protection harnesses when they're working on high scaffolding. Now, I'm aware that what I'm describing sounds absurd and stupid. It sounds like an Inspector Gadget supervillain organization, something so impossibly foolish it's kind of hard to picture. In fact, it's such a dumb idea that it couldn't even work within a work of fiction such as comic books or children's animations unless it were deliberately stupid and satirical, such as the Venture Brothers Guild of Calamitous Intent, which is a parody of an evil organization. The concept of a mainstream narrative pushing for workers in dangerous work environments to ignore the need for hearing protection or steel-toed footwear and so on, it's so stupid. The only way to conceive of it would be in a fictional setting and done as something deliberately stupid for comedic effect. Which brings me to a video I saw today of an interview show featuring an author pushing her new book. The woman is named Lauren Stiller Reichlin, or Reichlin. Now, Reichlin is a career feminist as well as a lawyer, so there's no excuse for her not having any understanding of the concept of presumed innocence, or the guaranteed consequence when presumed innocence is swept away by a movement like #MeToo. But what Reichlin says in her TV interview is the usual: feminism hasn't gone far enough, #MeToo hasn't gone far enough, and so on and so forth. And I think what she intends is condensed in one particular thing she says mid-segment in response to mention of what's being called the Me Too backlash. This would be various iterations of the Mike Pence rule, where men are increasingly unwilling to work with women because they reasonably fear for the termination of their professional lives by a false accusation. What she says is, and I quote, "The notion that there are all these false accusations out there is really laughable." Now, I'll play the clip so you can see the complete context.
So what I worry about more is the Me Too backlash.
Right.
That sense of, oh, I can't mentor this person because now I can't be alone with women, or I can't talk to women. And that is, of course, hugely detrimental to careers of women who still haven't reached parity when it comes to major positions in pay equity. So that is, I think, the number one thing we have to fight against. And the notion that when we live in a world in which people don't speak up, the whole book, The Shield of Silence, is about the silence and the fears that women have about talking about these issues. So the notion that there are all these false accusations out there is really laughable.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to try to convince you that false accusations exist or that they are common. There are so many false cases of accusation that they can't even keep them out of the social justice mainstream media. And when you get down to non-famous people being ruined by false accusations, the numbers are staggering. And yet, here we have an expert, a lawyer, being interviewed on a TV show telling you that the concept of false accusations is laughable. And there's no opposing viewpoint being offered. This is presented as if it's truth from the mountaintop. And remember, this isn't just some uneducated hillbilly who doesn't know what she's talking about. She knows what's real. And she's telling you that the guys in the business world who are rightly terrified to have a closed-door meeting with a woman, those guys are putting credence into a danger to their careers and lives that she calls laughable. And in the video segment of the show, you can look at the text headers superimposed on the screen during the show. Here's one that says, Yahoo News, how companies should react to workplace misconduct. So this isn't just a TV show indulging one old, cranky, misinformed academic by presenting no differing view. This is a widespread and systematic public messaging campaign telling you to ditch your steel-toed boots, wear flip-flops on the job site, use no fall protection when you're up on the scaffold, and the weirdos who wear a hard hat or steel-toed boots, or a high-vis vest, they're not just strange, they're bad people who probably hate forklift operators. And there's one more thing to mention. We keep hearing about the so-called backlash to #MeToo. That is, guys refusing to work closely with women, or senior male managers opting for their own safety not to have lunch with a female colleague, and so on. That's apparently a backlash against #MeToo. But this is absurd. Calling the Mike Pence rule a backlash is precisely wrong. Now, the concept of presumed innocence, although it's conventionally thought of within the framework of the court system, is actually one of the foundations of civil society. If, for example, somebody in a professional or a collegial environment makes an arbitrary and a false accusation against somebody else of some shocking and unacceptable behavior, the accuser is going to be expected to provide some reason or evidence for whatever they accuse the other person of. If I accuse my coworker of stealing people's snacks out of the lunchroom fridge, and I'm lying, then I'm going to suffer a consequence when my lie is discovered. Within our society, we're all assumed to be innocent of wrongdoing unless convincing evidence is offered to the contrary. This assumption is what allows us to cooperate and work together without a much higher level of violence and paranoia in between us. But the Me Too movement has specifically removed this part of the social contract. In a post-Me Too work environment, the accusation is the judgment of guilt, but not for women and men, not equally. It's women armed with a man-disposal superweapon that can be fired off at any time and for any reason. And a lawyer is telling us during her TV interview that men limiting their contact with members of a demographic constantly demonstrating a willingness to use this weapon are buying into an imagined danger that is, in her words, laughable. I could characterize this with some adjectives and superlatives, but I don't think I have to. I'm just going to say, make your own decision. Thanks for listening, and as always, have a lovely, lovely day.